This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guest, he's returning for another of the series we're doing, Dean Henderson. Dean, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Regis.
Well, you and I were discussing just before we started the show how many of us are being shadow banned, are having content deleted. You and I both have experienced this recently. And so the topics that you and I and others are talking about are not very much appreciated by powers that be. We'll talk about that more tonight. But one of your recent articles had to do with the depopulation agenda. Previously, when I have thought about this depopulation, the names of Bill Gates and the Rockefellers and others immediately come to mind. I mean, it's eugenics. Uh, this is reducing the population because they think there's too many of us that are just wasting resources. Tell me what's behind the depopulation agenda. You made a very good argument for this in this recent Substack blog.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long story, right? I mean, but if you were an invading force and came to Earth, how would you play it, right? So Mike Adams did a really good thing on Brighteon the other night, and pretty much echoes what I think. So I think that the whole process kind of happened like this. So these Anunnaki crown bloodlines came to Samaria, and they scouted out the Earth as a planet, and they said, "Well, okay, we'll come here." So you go through a whole process, and you get to the Middle Ages in Europe, and the kings and queens are lazy and they're already inbred. They're not very smart. They just go to war with each other. That's about all they know how to do. They don't know how to build anything. They don't know how to innovate. They don't have any vision, about how things go. And so that got old for them. And they realized, like, well, if we're going to have, infrastructure, and if we're going to set up this industrial revolution, and then the second and the third, and now the fourth industrial revolution, which of course involves silicone and AI and, computer chips getting smaller and smaller and faster, CPUs basically, then we're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to let people be free for a while. So they let America do its thing, all under sort of, we got out from under the British Parliament, but we never really got out from under the British Crown, right? And so, but they said, okay, go to town, America, and be innovators, be capitalists, come up with new ideas, come up with technology, and especially come up with this vision that I believe they had when they already came to this planet, seeing all the sand that this planet had. And sand, of course, is what you make silicone out of. Silicone's everywhere. So they let Americans innovate and come up with stuff. And that's what the Crown always does. They always, they let the inventors loose, and then they control the patent office. Like in the United States, the patent office is controlled by Serco, which is the Crown Corporation that, has contracts with nearly every branch of our government, and therefore pretty much controls our government through contracts and through steering the government in directions which it wants the contracts to go. And so they control the patent office. So, Facebook's a good example. That was something that somebody else came up with, and it was stolen. And the internet itself, all these ideas were stolen and handed over to crown corporations like IBM, International Business Machine, and then they take control of it. So this is how the Crown has always done it throughout its history. They've always allowed the innovators to do their thing, and then they take the ideas over. They steal the ideas, then they claim them as their own intellectual property rights. So now that we've built the infrastructure, and now that we've come up with the computers, and the AI, the artificial intelligence, which is the the soul brother of these Anunnaki, because it's cold, it's calculating, it's all about math, it's no feelings, it's just efficient, and it just gets things done that they want done. So now that they're done with that, we're expendable. And all these brush fire wars throughout the years. I mean, you had Kissinger talking about this when he was the Secretary of State for Nixon, and his Undersecretary of State, Thomas Ferguson, at the State Department, talked about it openly. I quote him in my big oil book about how we had to, we were fighting when we go to El Salvador, we have to target the women of childbearing age. And this is all documented in NSA documents. And Kissinger talked about this. And Kissinger went to China and pushed the one-child policy when he did the détente in 1973. And that was part of the deal. It's like you limit your population to one child per family, and then we'll come over here with our stolen innovations from other people, and we'll teach you how to build these factories and how to do these chemical processes, and we'll bring Walmart buyers over here, and they'll buy everything you can make in your dollar a day slave labor factories, and we'll ship it back to the West, and we'll make you rich. And all these things, and then Vietnam and all these wars ever since then, these brush fire wars, a lot of the main reason for them is depopulation. That's why you can buy an AK-47 in a West African market for like $49, because they've always pitted people against each other. And they did it way back during the slave trade. They'd go to one tribe and say, well, here we got these, we heard word that this other tribe is going to attack you, so you need to buy these guns from us. And then the tribe would buy them. And then they go to the other tribe and they'd say, well, we're here, this other tribe's going to attack you, and you need to protect yourself and buy these weapons from us. And so then they would. And this was really the beginning of the international arms trade. Up to that point, it was confined to Europe, and the bloodlines themselves would go to war with family versus family. So one of the main purposes of these brush fire wars is most definitely depopulation, along with, of course, a business model that as Edward Wilson, CIA guy back in the 60s, who got basically became the fall guy for an entire guns for drugs operation, said before he went to jail the rest of his life in Marion prison, high security prison in Illinois. He said, war is business and business is good. They asked him, what's the reason? Why did they fight these wars? What's the point of funding both sides? What's the point of, getting into these conflicts? And he said, war is business and business is good. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is depopulation. And so you target the women of childbearing age. You had a situation here during the pandemic. I won't name that pandemic, so you two won't get angry. But they were targeting Black people, clearly. You see evidence all the time of, because Black people have more kids, minorities tend to have more kids, and they're more unruly than white people generally too. So they target specific populations with the depopulation. They target unruly populations. The African continent in general has always been insubordinate to the crown more than any other area of the world. And this is why the Africans were enslaved. And this is why they still, to this day, have it out for Haiti, for example, because Haiti was the island in the Caribbean where the slaves fled to, and they declared a free state for a while. And they hated that. They just couldn't stand that. So to this day, they target Haiti with destruction, with carnage, with drug gangs that are working for the CIA and, transshipping the cocaine from Colombia into Miami. It's halfway. Check out the map. Haiti is halfway. So all of these Tonton Macoutes and all of these Duvaliers and all of these mafia types that have run Haiti over the years, including the new president, because the old president was assassinated, remember, about 3-4 years ago, when he wouldn't allow the Pfizer people to come in there and do their thing with his people. We won't say what that thing is because we don't want to, offend the people at YouTube who hate truth and get this banned. But that's the way they deal with it. They deal with undesirables. And recently they've, again, just like everything else, recently they've come out in the open, and the World Economic Forum is is using the word useless human beings. Like we're in an era of useless human beings, they're calling it. And so really, now that the infrastructure is built, now that all the innovation has been done that is required for machines to take over the tasks of humans, which already by some estimates is like 40-50% of human tasks are now being or could be taken over by AI, by machines. We really are expendable. And so how do you do that? Well, one of the first things you do is you target males. And this is the article that I wrote 3 days ago on Substack that it just disappeared from Substack. So anybody that thinks Substack is any different than any of these other outfits as far as censorship, I can tell you from personal experience, it's not. But that article's disappeared now. But it was called Illuminati Toxic Masculinity Salvo, because they've been bandying about in their fake woke corporate movement, this phrase toxic masculinity. So it's bad to be brave, which was the number one attribute that was desirable among indigenous people, especially the Lakota, where I learned my everything from, was bravery. And now bravery is bad. And so if you're a brave man, or if you're masculine in any way, if you refuse to be a girly boy, if you refuse to, basically bow down to this matriarchy, which they're using to tamp down the male energy. And why are they doing this? They're doing this because the invasion is imminent, because the extermination program has begun. And we can see that with events in the past few years, and this pandemic and these shots and all this stuff that's happening and killing people, and people are dying, mysterious illnesses. People are, so it's gone beyond war now. So war wasn't enough, although there's plenty of war again, as you can see in Ukraine and the Middle East. And who are they targeting there? The Palestinians, the unruly ones, the colonized people, the most recently colonized people probably on this planet, who are still fighting, but still it's recent, so it's raw, and it hasn't been determined yet if they will be conquered. So they target those people. They're targeting all people now. We're in the extermination phase, and you have to get the males out of the way. Why? Because one of the male roles, whether feminists, fake feminists, whatever you want, Gloria Steinem, CIA people, whatever you want to call them, look, one of the male roles, one of the reasons men are here, one of the reasons we're not useless, even though they would love all women to think we are at this point, it seems, and many of them believe we are, it seems, is that we're protectors. We're protectors. If you watch the natural world, you read my last book, I talk about the buck, deer, watching the highway while the does and the fawns got across the highway. That's because he's a protector. That's his role. That's our role. That's what we're here to do. That's one of our things that we do. We have roles, females have roles. That's the way God made it. That's the way Creator made it. And no matter, what type of Luciferian inversion agenda they come up with to obfuscate that or deny that, that's just still natural law, and that's just the way it is. So one of our roles is to be protectors. So what do you do if you're this alien force that you've come to Earth, been here for thousands of years now, working on the human population, squeezing all the innovation and labor out of them you can, especially from males, by the way, because males built the bridges, the roads, the primary infrastructure, laid the sewer lines, laid the electric lines, all the major heavy lifting, and literally heavy lifting was done by the males. So now that that's done, now you can get rid of the males. Why? Because then when you come out in the open and take off the mask, and someday they will, it's coming soon, because they're already taking off the mask, and tell us exactly who they are and why they're here, and that, democracy, no, sorry. We allowed free speech for a while because that bred innovation. No, we don't need that anymore. No more free speech. Sorry. And they'll just come out and openly tell us that. And what are we going to do about it? We have no political means, at least in the West, to deal with this. So they're going to come out and tell us this. In the meantime, they're going to degrade men mainly because they have to get the men out of the way as protectors. And then when they come out of the closet and say, this is who we are, yeah, we're these monsters, these disfigured monsters that you can't even imagine how evil we are, who's going to stop them? Who's going to stop them? Nobody. And so they have to especially turn the females against the males at this point. And you can see that happening. You can see how they promote women to management positions way more often than men now. Why? Because women have been conditioned not to be as discerning as men. Now, some of them are, and I'm not making generalizations. Some of them are very discerning. Some of them have a really high bullshit meter. But that's not the way that women have been trained. Women have been trained in one way, men have been trained in another way. And all you can do is sort of fight off the training and sort of get back to what you're naturally supposed to do. And women are the nurturers. Women are the love, which is the most important thing, honestly. But now they're using that against the men, and they're using that in a matriarchal sort of way where, if a husband goes out, say he's working for some tyrant of a boss, and they have a Christmas party, and the husband, has a few drinks at him and says, you son of a bitch, you do. And the wife will go to the husband and just, oh, be quiet, John. We have to keep the job. I have to have some more carpeting and some, I have to, and that's the way it's working. And so the women are managing more and more and more. Why? Again, because they'll do it. They'll just manage. They will just push the slaves through the corrals for the Illuminati banksters and not question it. And you can see this is happening. Men are being replaced in the workplace by women. And more our economy is turning into this, all the infrastructure being built. So there's less literal heavy lifting. There's more computing. There's more coding. There's more just, pushing the slaves through the corral and shopping, of course, shopping, which is the main thing they've trained the women to do is shop. They just do. And this is something that all women need to not do so much of, because this is what feeds the beast. This is what's built up the beast. This is what's created the problem. So, but yeah, I mean, this is a huge aspect of it is this attempt to pit the genders against each other, and especially the women against the men. The more I've in the world, this is, it's just the way it is, and that's the way it's going. And it didn't used to be like this. So, this is all part of the attempt to wipe out humans. And at some point, we're seeing an acceleration of that now. Many people saw the Deagle report. I saw it first in about 2015, 16. Talks about a 70% population decrease in the West by 2025. But not in Russia, not in China, not in Africa, not in Latin America. And so this is the other thing. You have to, the crown always takes out the competition. So who's the competition to the crown bloodline? Well, it's going to be the middle class. It's going to be the entrepreneurs. It's going to be people who literally did make money out of nothing. Unlike the bloodline, which always had money, never innovated. We're always lazy. We're always parasites. Never did a day's work in their life. But there's this other bunch of people who are go-getters, and they do things and they get stuff done, and they actually make some money for themselves. Maybe they become a millionaire. maybe they put together some money. Maybe they buy a few houses. Maybe they, and that's the competition. So who do you take out first? Again, you take out the West. You take out the people that have attained that lifestyle, that have a little bit of money in the bank, that can actually, talk freely, because they don't live in debt. They don't have a mortgage to pay. They don't maybe have a car payment, and those people are free. Those people can be uncensored. They cannot self-censor. That's the biggest problem in this culture is self-censorship, not the censorship by Substack or by YouTube, but self-censorship. That you're being conditioned to be obedient all the time. And these things that run the world, yeah, of course, they're terrible. But what about the obedient people? What's more terrible? And some days I wonder what's more terrible, because if this obedient class would just break away from the bloodline and start defending the weak and the poor. We were at McDonald's yesterday, went in there to get a coffee or something, and it was just backed up like crazy. There was 3 people behind the counter, and people started grumbling because, everyone goes to the drive-through. They won't get out of their car. They just want to run their gas, feed ExxonMobil, be lazy. And then it takes them like 10 times as long as if you just walk in the restaurant and make your order usually. But yesterday it was all backed up. So we go in there, and some lady came in there and she was doing DoorDash. And so this is what McDonald's has done. So they're just like every other corporation, every cartel, because they're cartels now, these things. They've overloaded their workers. There was 3-4 workers in the back. They were supposed to do drive-through. They were supposed to do counter. They were supposed to, add to that DoorDash now, right? That's a whole new thing, but they don't hire extra people to deal with that. They just let the people deal with it that are there. And then there's these things now where outside the restaurant, that it happened during this pandemic where you were supposed to park out there and they'd bring your food out to you. So they've added that. But again, they didn't add any employees. So this woman comes here and she's grumbling at the employees. And I had already been talking to them, and they're both black women behind the counter. And she was just yelling at them. This woman who was door dashing or whatever, being a peon, being put into bondage and didn't know. I thought she was all free and liberated because this is such a neat name, and such a cool concept. Everything's so cool that they do. So she's yelling at these black women behind the counter, and I said, "Why don't you take it up with Ray Kroc?" And the black women looked at me like, like, yeah. And that's it. And it's like, okay. And then this whole mantra that, they can't find workers. They can't find workers in this kind of, no, you can find workers if you're willing to pay them, but they don't pay them. And so the cartels, that's what they're doing. Less service, more time. They don't care. Same way with the airlines. They'll overbook their flights by 1,000%. They don't care if you don't get a seat. They don't care if you have to wait a week to fly, as long as you've paid them on the internet, because everything's on the internet, right? So everybody shops more. It's easier to shop. People aren't as discerning. It's just like hotels. You used to go through town, you'd see $29.99 special for a night or whatever. They don't do that anymore because everybody books way ahead of time on the internet. And again, they'll overbook hotels. They don't care. They don't care if your room isn't available. They got your money. They got your money. That's all they care about. And they damn sure don't care about the employees. So we're seeing this process play out where workers have less power all the time. Yeah, there was a few strikes in the U.S. That's good. But net, workers continue to get pummeled, to lose power. People shop more in less discerning ways because of the internet. And you don't really need much more infrastructure. So that's what we're looking at. And we're at that phase now where they know that we're useless people, useless human beings. That's what they're calling us. Klaus Schwab and his bunch. And they literally want to replace us with machines. They've got the silicone chips. They go fast. They can train these things. They're having us train them, of course, because, that's just another slap at human beings. Like they make us train them, and then we're just done. And so, there's everywhere you look, depopulation. I mean, the life expectancy in the United States has gone down 2 years in a row. That's never happened in, I don't know, 50 years, something like that. And why? So of course, the 5G towers are up. We don't know what those things really are. We don't know what's really up there. I mean, I know, for example, people that live right next to them, and they say their reception is worse than ever. So is it really even a 5G tower? Like, what are these things? What are these big towers they're putting up? What's on them? Crown Castle has put almost every one of them up. Crown Castle is located on Fleet Street in the city of London. Crown Castle is a crown corporation. Crown Castle, think about the game chess. What does the king do? He castles. So what are on these towers? And I maintain that it's weapons. It's a weapons system. That's why they put them in schools. That's why they put them on water towers. They put them next to electric grids. They put them on nursing homes, hospitals, kindergartens, daycare centers, churches. Why? More I've thought about it, I think it's because once we get to the point where it's, all we have is open warfare, we're going to have to take the towers down when we find out there are weapons systems that are targeting us with electromagnetic frequencies, which was done in Iraq, which has been done in wars to immobilize an enemy. What are we going to do? We're going to have to take the towers down. We're going to have to go get the towers. Well, then what? Oh, guess what? They're all in schools. They're all in water towers. They're all in infrastructure, electricity grids, churches, hospitals. So what are the rebels going to do? Attack hospitals? Attack churches? Attack your electricity grid that your people are depending on? So it's pretty interesting. So that's a huge aspect of the depopulation is the 5G towers. And again, my take on the whole pandemic is it's all COVID. I mean, it's all 5G. 5G causes this stuff. 5G causes people not to be able to breathe. 5G confuses people, irritates people, causes probably a lot of your mass shootings by driving people crazy, which they also love, by the way, because it's just more depopulation. What else do they love? They love suicide. What, 60% increase in suicides in the United States in the last 2 years? They love it. They would, I mean, it's so much easier for, they don't have to waste ammunition on you. They don't have to waste 5G frequencies on you. They don't have to waste anything on you. You just kill yourself. That's their most promising avenue of depopulation, is if we could just demoralize people, just take the will to live out of people, which you're seeing in people now. You're actually seeing that. You're seeing people walking around like zombies with no will to live. And that's the easiest way for these people to take out humans, is just have them kill themselves. And so this is why, this is why the fentanyl is everywhere. How can you explain that? How can you explain the rise of this fentanyl and, the fact that Biden just allows it to flow freely across the Mexican border? The fact that they're hiding this stuff and all kinds of other recreational drugs that people have done, including marijuana. So that's another aspect of the depopulation, is the fentanyl and the whole opioid crisis in general. And because it just drags people down. It's the same thing they did to the Chinese, right? During the opium wars in the 1800s. That's what that was all about. The East India Company goes in there. They grow opium in India. At one point, Mahatma Gandhi was arrested for interfering with the revenue, was his crime, because he was protesting the growth of poppies that he knew were being sent to China to put the Chinese people out to lunch and make China ripe for takeover by these East India Company, Hong Kong, Shanghai bankers, the crown, the bloodline. And so there's 2 opium wars, and that's exactly what they're doing. That's why, and of course, the war in Afghanistan coincided with the rise of the opioid crisis in the West, and that's not a coincidence either, because the war in Afghanistan, they didn't care if they won it, they didn't care if they lost it. Look what happened. Nothing. The Taliban's still in power. But what happened? Oh, a lot of opium, a lot of poppies were grown, a lot of heroin was processed, a lot of fentanyl was made and put. It's a warehouse now, and mission accomplished that way. And they don't care. They don't care that they left a bunch of guns there. All the better for the local people to kill each other. All the better for them to be shipped to some other war zone, so other people in other parts of the world can kill each other. And you see this all the time. So, and people say, well, none of this makes sense. And why are they doing these things? But it only makes sense if you grow up and start being an adult and recognize the threat. And people need to do that immediately. Recognize the threat. Recognize how evil these people are. Then it all makes sense. And then if you consider the fact that maybe they're not from this planet, guess what? It makes even more sense. And all this gibberish about, it's human nature, meaning human nature is bad, which has all been brainwashed into our heads to say that over and over and over. Oh, it's just human nature. Wait a minute. I thought human nature was good. I thought we were created by God in his image. Yeah, we were. But the Illuminati bloodline Satanists came along and told us we were bad, and told us human nature was bad, and told us nature was bad, and told us everything's bad, I guess, really. Everything that's good is bad. Everything that's bad is good. So pornography, good. War, good. Drugs, good. Human nature, bad. And this is just until people can sort of again, grow up and grow a pair. What are we going to do? I mean, it's like talking to a wall. You try to explain this to people, it's like talking to a fucking wall. And because they just are so far behind. They're so retarded, really. They're mentally retarded. They've been mentally retarded by crown propaganda, and they believe every bit of it. And you come along and try to explain this to them, why this is going on. They just have no idea. They just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. They're in denial. So it's an entire population in the West anyway that's in denial about the nature of reality. So,
let me jump in here, Dean. You talk about vast portions of the population are in denial. How did these globalists, how did they pull that off? You've written about this. Uh, it's the internet, it's Wi-Fi. Uh, isn't this how they create this hive mentality or herd mentality, whatever you want. Talk to me a little bit more about that, and also how through the media, through the internet, um, they inject other things that work towards this depopulation. Wokeism, for example, gender confusion, LGBTQ, transgender rights everywhere in the military. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how they use that to poison our minds to get us all thinking in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, in the latter case, the whole transgender gender confusion thing you're talking about, again, it's just, to me, it's just part of the discrediting of the masculine, the attack on the masculine, because they don't want men, they don't want real men, they don't want, in the West, they don't want anybody who's brave enough to even say what's going on, to even tell people, this is what's happening, because anymore to say that, I mean, it make it, people think you're crazy. This guy's actually saying what's happening. Wow. And that's the degree of self-censorship and censorship in this culture. So they have to confuse the genders. They have to sort of puff up and patronize women and tell them, oh, you should be a he woman, you should be a shero, you should go out and run things, and you should be as big of an asshole as the patriarchs that you grew up under, basically, right? And I had a friend who said, he said patriarchy, matriarchy, hatriarchy. Okay, so let's get that in our heads. Where did the archy come from? Oh, the monarchy, I see. So the oligarchy, I see. So the aristocracy, I see. So all of those ideas, where did they come from? They came from the crown. The only answer is anarchy, which means no archy, against all archy, against all. I don't want to control you, and don't control me, okay? Don't control me. Don't even try. And I'm not going to try. And the people that don't want to control you are the ones that don't want to be controlled. And the people that don't want to be controlled are the ones that will never control you. You get it? So if they want to control you, stay away from them. If you want to control them, get some therapy, get some help, because that's mean, nasty, satanic stuff at its root. And you need to get rid of it out of your life. And you'll be a lot happier when you do, by the way. So there's all this gender confusion, right? So then the internet, sure. I mean, that's just a means to spread it. I mean, the internet, again, was founded as ARPANET. It was researched by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Administration, DARPA, the creepiest part of the Pentagon. That's where it came out. It was first called ARPANET. And when it was released to the public, because it was all just about propaganda. It was about propaganda towards China, Russia, Iran, or enemies, whatever. And that's what it was used for. It was a tool of warfare. It was developed at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, just like 5G was, and along with Stanford Research Labs and all the old CIA, military research facilities, and which became Silicon Valley. And Google was funded by DARPA, and Facebook, which was LifeLog, was funded by DARPA and started by DARPA. So this is all a military operation. The key, of course, is just information. But now you've got a situation where the information is coming from everybody. So everybody can be an author. Everybody can write music. Everybody can do everything. And that's the message they've sent with Facebook is you can be famous. You should be famous. You too can be famous. And so everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to get those likes. And if they don't, they get all offended, right? That never used to be the case. Like people 10, 15 years ago, they didn't want to be famous. They didn't want to be noticed. They didn't want to be the same. Because, of course, to get noticed and get the likes, you have to be the same. You have to reinforce the CIA point of view. And then you get liked a lot. But if you don't, you get banned and the mob attacks you. And see, so they've made it interactive now. They've made the propaganda that they've always put out through the television, Edward Bernays, through the newspaper, Empire Press Union, from which the MI6, MI5, and CIA were recruited from, the Pilgrim Society, the old newspaper guild. All of these means of media, because media in Latin means medium, which is basically means to get between you and the truth. So media is all bad. If you look at it that way, media is never a good thing. It's something that gets in between you and the truth, right? So they've known this forever. And when Brene had the TV ads and the concepts, you know, it wasn't interactive. It was just one way. It came at you. It was bad. It's still bad. TV's still just as bad as the internet, maybe worse. But now there's something more nefarious going on where it's interactive, where they've recruited all the people who want to be liked. And first of all, they had to make them that way. They had to make them soft, and they had to make them want to be famous and get attention, and which they never used to need. They never used to need that. They were perfectly content without all this attention, all these likes, all this fake friends on Facebook. You know, they were perfectly content. And then this came along, and now everybody wants that. Everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to be heard. You notice you go out in the street and everybody's just desperate for you to listen to them. And they don't listen to you at all. People don't know how to listen anymore. Most people, honestly, but they just want to be heard. They just all want to be heard. And this is the way it is. And this is what I'm so important. But they know in deep inside that the reason they're saying that is they don't feel important at all, because it's just a paradox. What they're really doing is isolating people, making them insecure, and taking their confidence away by making them think that this is where it's at, that it's not about compassion and love. No, it's about being right. It's always about being right and being on the right side and being on the correct side and being on the CIA side, right? Because the CIA is going to tell us what reality is, and then we're going to spread that to the masses. And this is the idea. This is the concept of social media, you know, which is basically to create, again, yeah, like you say, create the hive mind, spread those ideas of the CIA, of the crown, and of the power elite into the population insidiously, really insidiously, to where nobody can hardly see it, and then take us down even further. And that's what's going on. So, you know, it's just information, right? In the end, it's just information. It's an information grid that's full of deception, right? That's full of lies, that inverts everything. It inverts reality. It tries to tell you a tree is a rock, and at its base, I mean, that's what it is. But like I say, now we've got everybody in these social media platforms. Think about that. You're on a platform now, and you make a post. You pound a post into the ground, and man, there's no nuance. There's no, it's just a post. Who cares? You know, nobody cares about your posts, okay? Like nobody cares. Nobody cares. Get it? Like nobody cares. They just want you to be a nice person. They just want you to be a team player. They just want you to be a part of the family. They don't care about your posts or your platform. Nobody cares. And it's really sad. I mean, it's really sad what they've done to human beings, because human beings are not what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Before the internet, guess what? What changed? The internet, that's what changed. And social media. And think about people 10, 15 years ago and how much cooler they were, and how much more agreeable they were instead of disagreeable. And it's all turning people on each other. All these mass shootings at high schools, they all posted on Facebook, because again, they want attention to that point where they'll murder 20, 30 people and themselves to get attention, to make that last post, make that stand, prove to the world that, I don't know what, prove that you're easily mind controlled. But, you know, it's just them. It's like 95% of this country now are easily mind controlled, just like that. Boom. They have no discernment. They have no authenticity anymore. They talk like everybody else. They use the same cute little acronyms. I don't even understand them. People write me, you know, emails, and I'm like, what does that mean? IMK, I don't care. I'm not going to talk like a robot. I'm not going to talk like a zombie. I'm not going to abbreviate my speech down to the point where it doesn't mean anything. And all these things, and they know all this. They know that they're degrading human beings the whole way. And that's how you get people to kill themselves and kill each other. And that's how you get race wars. And of course, it helps when George Soros helps fund them, which he did with Black Lives Matter. And of course, it helps when you attempt colored revolutions like the one they tried pulling over Christmas weekend in Serbia, which dismally failed, you know, because they tore Kosovo away from Serbia, and Kosovo became the new drug trafficking nexus for that region. Kosovo Liberation Army, Albania. These are huge drug platforms now in Europe. And the U.S. has its biggest base in the world in Kosovo right now. So that failed. And that's the hope we have. Honestly, Regis, the hope we have is Russia, is China, Iran, the Palestinians, Hezbollah, Maduro in Venezuela, the Malians, the Niger government. You know, the governments that are continuing to revolt, that are continuing to send these people back, and that's the hope we have. And it's come down to just so clear to me that these are the good guys, and the people running our country and the West are the bad guys. And what they're trying to do, the bad guys are trying to do, is to turn the people rotten, turn their own citizens into demons. And this is another thing that comes out of the internet that I don't think people understand. There's all kinds of radio frequencies coming out of this screen right now. I'm immune to it because I know it's coming at me. Anybody can be immune to it as long as you know it's coming at you. But if you don't know it's coming at you, you're going to be mind controlled, and you'll wonder why, and you'll be depressed, and you'll be moody, and you'll go up and down because you won't know. But you have to know this is coming at you. You have to grow up, people, and you have to know that this is real, that this is not some made up thing, that this is indeed radio chaos, as in Roger Waters' album Radio Chaos. He saw this coming. John Trudell saw this coming. One of the great minds of all time, Lakota warrior, counterintelligence chief for the American Indian movement at Wounded Knee. There's been, people have seen this coming for a long time. Rudolf Steiner saw this coming in the 19-teens and talked about electromagnetic frequencies, how they could affect people, how the Spanish flu was tied to the development of sonar by RCA Corporation, a crown corporation. This is all old knowledge that we're talking about here. It's not new. It's just that the systems of delivery by the bad guys have gotten much more sophisticated. And a big part of that right now, is a hive mind, the formation of the hive mind. This overwhelming, you create this overwhelming desire of people to fit in, to just be like everybody else. And how boring is that?
Let's now talk about a recent phenomenon in the last 3 or 4 years. How people have this hive mind, they want to be liked. And what have we been bombarded by? Well, we were bombarded in 2020 in March with a pandemic. Everybody all over the world immediately were self-distancing, wearing masks, and getting vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. Any of us who refused to do that, who refused to go along with it, we were ostracized. We were alienated. We were ridiculed. And now you move a few years ahead, and we have this war in Ukraine. The same hive mentality. I have so many friends and family in the United States who have ostracized me, alienated me, blocked me, won't talk to me because I live in Russia and I present a different view of this conflict in Ukraine. This method is working to perfection. And now look at this conflict in Israel and Palestine. The same thing. They've forced people to take sides. And because you have a particular position, you're alienated.
Mm-hmm.
They've done this. They've done this incredibly successfully and efficiently, and without people even knowing it.
Yeah.
Now, they've got other tools that they've been using. Some of the other tools that they've been using on us, well, you've mentioned some, is war, this depopulation agenda. What about the United Nations and this sustainable agenda 2030? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. Third to last book is Illuminati Agenda 21. That's the precursor to Agenda 2030, and that was hatched at the Rio Summit in 1992, which was organized by who? By Prince Charles. That's who. And Al Gore was a big part of it, and Conrad Black, and these people. But it was Prince Charles that organized it. So yes, this is all about two things. First of all, you take all the former activists who, like one of the things we did in Missoula, Montana, 1993, we shut down a paper mill called Stone Container because it was polluting the airshed. And the city government would say, oh, we have to ban wood stoves. It's the people's fault. We have to have less cars on the roads. It's the people's fault. We were like, duh. It's this big paper mill out here, Holmes. Let's get rid of it. And we finally did. We finally did after, much scorn, ridicule, people parking in my alley with cameras and looking in my window and all. We finally got rid of it. Okay. So that's what people used to do. That's what environmental activists used to do, right? Now what do? They show up and they throw blood on things and they say climate change is going to kill us. And so first of all, climate change is a very nebulous thing. What can you really do about it? You can go shut down a paper mill. You can go shut down a Exxon Mobil refinery. You can stop a train carrying toxic chemicals easily, but you can't do what are you supposed to do when they just keep saying climate change, climate change? So it makes that new generation of activists pretty much inert. It takes them out of commission, out of action. There's nothing, they know there's nothing, it's just too big. It's too nebulous. It's too to really do anything about, because it's this whole terror. It's really a terror campaign against humanity by saying this over and over and over. It's just terrorism. And it makes people don't want to do anything. So that's one thing. The other thing is there actually is a war on carbon. Why? Because carbon is like 75% of everything. Everything organic, everything on Earth, naturally, everything that the Creator made is made of carbon. So what would happen if we eliminated carbon? Well, guess what? All the plants would die. I mean, just think about it. Just use your head. What would happen if we got rid of too much carbon? The plants would die. Then what would happen after that? Oh, the animals would die. They eat the plants. And the humans would die that depend on the animals and the plants. Everything God created, now, and first he created the plants and then the animals and then us, we're told. So now it's just in reverse being stripped out. First you go up, and you strip out the food supply of human beings. So yeah, this is definitely part of the extermination campaign of human beings. You take out the food supply. What else do? You take out the energy supply. You say, oh, we don't need oil anymore. We don't need natural gas anymore. We'll just we'll just blow up pipelines that Russia has going under the North Sea, and then we'll just do we'll do lithium batteries. We'll dry up the Salton Sea in California which they've done. Why? Because there's a bunch of lithium there, or we'll go to the Congo and kill 8 million people in the last 20 years because the Congo is the most resource-rich country probably in the world per square mile. Oh, per square mile, definitely, but maybe just flat out. And they have all the rare earth minerals, and they have lithium, and they have all this stuff. And so what did they do? They went over there. They overthrew Patrice Lumumba. They overthrew his son later, and they pretty much carved up the country with a bunch of warring factions controlled by the Western Intelligence Agency. Do two things: depopulate the people, especially in resource-rich areas. You want to depopulate in resource-rich areas so you can get the resources. That's why you hear about massacres all the time in Nigeria. Nigeria is oil-rich, a lot of oil. So you got to depopulate, especially those areas where there's resources. And they've known this, and they've done this for decades. So that's what's going on in the Congo. And so, okay, yeah, let's have electric cars. So then what? We still need to do this. We still need to mine in the Congo. We still need to murder millions of people so that we can bring you electric cars, which are dependent on what? The power grid, coal, natural gas. What are you going to use to charge these things? No, by the way, now you put sanctions on Russia so you don't have nickel. So there's no nickel. And so this whole electric car thing, it's just these kind of elitist people who can afford to buy a Tesla, I guess, telling the poor people that we're the problem. And while they fly around on their private jets to climate conferences like John Kerry does. And private jets are way worse than commercial jets as far as the amount of emissions they put out in the atmosphere. They don't care. They eat steak. They tell us to eat bugs. Bill Gates buys up all the farmland while he tells us not to farm anymore. In the Netherlands, they're putting restrictions on farmers. So everything they do is a contradiction. Everything they do is about eliminating the food supply, therefore eliminating human beings. And that, so there's an attack on carbon. There's also an attack on oxygen. And this is where the 5G towers come in, because 5G, when turned up to 60 gigahertz, 60 gigahertz is the exact same frequency as our body takes in oxygen into the hemoglobin, into our bloodstream. Because our everything operates at a frequency. That's the nature of reality. That's the big secret they don't want a lot of people to know, or one of the big secrets, is that it's actually all about frequencies. It's all about it's all about waves. It's all about vibes. It's all about frequencies. So there's a war on humans directly by denying them of oxygen. That's why during COVID, think about George Floyd. George Floyd was like some kind of, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And then here comes COVID, and it's I can't breathe. It was all respiratory. What's RSV? Respiratory. I can't breathe. Well, isn't it possible that these towers are mimicking the natural process by which our bodies take in the oxygen into our bloodstream, and then our bodies are being confused and taking in the 5G frequencies instead and not getting enough oxygen? Just like it happened with glyphosate. Glyphosate, Roundup, mimics glycine, the most important amino acid in your stomach. So instead of taking in glycine naturally, we're taking in glyphosate, and our bodies are confused and think glyphosate is glycine. And that's why you have all these gut problems and stomach problems and digestive problems and celiac disease, where people they're told they can't eat wheat, even though wheat is like this, whatever, 100,000-year-old crop or whatever. Oh, all of a sudden we can't eat wheat. No. It's the Roundup. No. It's not the COVID. It's the 5G towers. Just like the Spanish flu was the sonar, just like the Asian flu in the 40s was the advent of television. See, and so they poison us over and over and over, and then they tell us it's something else. And that's what they're doing now. So there's an attack on carbon. There's an attack on oxygen. There's also an attack on our water. Of course, they pollute our water everywhere. They chlorinate and fluoridate our water. Fluoride is a mining waste product that has been proven to make people, well, it decreases your IQ. It's been proven. So they do that to every municipal water system by design to make people dumber and dumber and dumber. And also, I might add, Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, frequency for Wi-Fi, 2.4 megahertz. Gigahertz, that's it. 2.4 gigahertz. The same exact frequency by which our body takes up water and spreads it around to our cells. We're 90% water. It's the most important thing, obviously, that we take in is water. So people are getting dehydrated. When you get dehydrated, you're much more susceptible to all kinds of different sicknesses, maladies, diseases. So there's a war on water. So there's a war on water. There's a war on oxygen. There's a war on food via the war on carbon. Everything that sustains us in this world, think about it, there's a war on it. But nobody knows this because they don't take the time to understand that this is what's going on. And they don't know. But yeah, absolutely. This is a huge part of it. The sustainability. If you hear the word sustainability, run, because it's nothing of the sort. It's just the opposite. Everything's just the opposite of what they say. That's the key to understanding, to starting to understand and take this whole thing and deconstruct it and learn that there's this attack on humanity and take it seriously. That the key is to understand that everything they say is inverted 180 degrees from what it really is. It's just that simple. If you just go by that one simple rule, you'll start seeing things completely differently.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. When you talk about climate change, I've used that term in the past, and I wish I hadn't. I used it in one of my films, but I also said you cannot deny the environmental degradation
Mm-mm.
that's taking place
Mm-mm.
all over the world, and it's what you've been talking about. It's their lust, their insatiable appetite for resources. You
Mm-hmm.
name it, from water to oxygen to gold, silver, nickel, whatever you want, coal.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what they've done to the environment to get that.
Yep.
And you talked about polluting our water supply. It all comes from this insatiable appetite to destroy, really,
Yep.
humanity
Yep.
in the pursuit of more and more resources. Dean, this is fascinating discussion. Um, you know, I agree with you, and I feel it personally, just like you do, that um, at times like we're feeling, at times it feels like we're losing the battle because so many people have been, we say, brainwashed. Their intelligence has been lowered. They've been shamed into uh, staying within the hive, staying within the social circles, which is probably the most powerful tool that they have. If somebody ventures out, they get rejected, they get isolated, uh, like you and I and so many others. And so they really have come very close, I think, to achieving their goal. Um, you mentioned Russia, China, Iraq, Syria, some other Venezuela. Let's end on that note. How do you see that as hopeful?
Excuse me. I see that as hopeful because these countries are in opposition, not just to the West, not just to capitalism, which, but to the whole agenda that we've been talking about. You know, you watch TikTok in China, for example. TikTok in China is educational. So it's actually these really good videos to the kids that teach them math, science, language, culture. Just the opposite of the TikTok in the West, right? Which is just, distractions, me, look at me, narcissism. I want attention. I want likes. It's just totally opposite. So you look at, as I understand, Russia doesn't allow glyphosate, or GMO foods. As I understand it, Russia doesn't allow the 5G. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this is a war of good and evil, and probably most people could never imagine, most Americans and most Westerners could never imagine, saying or hearing somebody say even that, yeah, Russia is the good and the United States is the evil. But that's just the truth. And Edgar Cayce saw that. Edgar Cayce predicted that Russia would be the country that saves humanity from these things. And I don't know how much Putin knows about these things and the nature of these things. I mean, I think he knows a lot more than he's letting on to. He must. But you look at the trajectory, of those countries, and I know you live there, so you experience it every day. And it's so different from the trajectory of the West. I mean, in Russia, as I understand it, the people are becoming more religious. The Russian Orthodox Church is gaining membership. Just the opposite of here, where religion's a dirty word. And I'm not saying religion's good. It's been used as a tool of enslavement, okay? But I'm just saying in general, like, people don't even seem to have a desire in this country over here to be good. Like, if that's not cool, if that doesn't get you likes, if that doesn't get you stepping into the herd, then the hell with being good, the hell with being kind. And it really is just the opposite, because if you're kind here, you're sort of considered naive and stupid by the herd. The herd's cool, everything in the herd is just so cool. And if they start telling the herd that mass murder is cool, a lot of them just go out and do it. I swear to God, because it's all about being cool. It's all about, again, like you say, it's all about acceptance. So I don't know. I just see hope. I'm a revolutionary. Okay. So I have supported throughout the years revolutionaries in different countries, revolutionary movements in different countries, including this country, the American Indian movement, the Black Panthers. Back when those movements were authentic, they weren't controlled by the CIA, where they were actually the people fighting back, even as recently as Occupy Wall Street or the battle in Seattle, which was really good too. And these things pop up, and these things pop up. But there's actually whole countries people don't understand. Americans don't understand. There's actually whole countries that have governments that are controlled by revolutionaries, like Cuba, like say Syria. There's a lot more than we think. Eritrea, for example, Ethiopia, a lot of African countries, a lot of South American countries. Morales is back in Bolivia, Peru, back and forth. But they're attempting to put a revolutionary government in Peru, and of course, there's been huge you know, they got a guy in, he got tossed out. There was huge protests. I mean, that's still not settled either. Brazil's not settled. You got Lula. Lula, at least, I mean, you know, he's maybe not a revolutionary, but at least he sides with the BRICS, and he sides with. He doesn't side with Ukraine. He never did, and he doesn't side with Israel. And so, if you actually look at the global map, there's a whole lot of hope. There's a whole lot of people that are rejecting the Western idea, that are rejecting the Illuminati Luciferian plan to reshape and eradicate mankind, and they're fighting against them with guns, with militaries, with government backing in some places. So I just think people have to see that tangible thing that's going on, and most of them, again, they don't want to see it. Oh, you know, they just tell you to pick the wrong side. It's not so much that they tell you, you know, to pick a side. In my view, it's more that they tell you to pick the wrong side, because there are two sides here. Ukraine is evil, drug trafficking, organ trafficking, woman trafficking, terrible, terrible place. Biological laboratories, terrible mafia runs that country. The Khodorkovskys, the Friedmans, the Alpha Bank crowd. That's who runs Ukraine. That's who always ran it. Dirty people, just dirty oligarchs. That's who runs Ukraine. And then Russia. And Russia is run by a democracy, by a guy, Putin, that honestly is one of the greatest leaders of our time. And history, if it's written honestly, will say that. So that's just the wrong side. They're just not only telling people to pick a side, they're telling people to pick the wrong side. Israel, Palestine. Yeah, go ahead, pick a side. Pick Palestine. That's the right side. There's no more time for equivocation. There's no more time for, oh, let's be fair. Yeah, I am being fair. Israel's evil and Palestine is good. That's fair. That's just fair. So people got to cut the mealy mouth, politically correct. We've all been trained. We've all been conditioned. We've all been taught to sort of water things down and try to appease people, and I'm done with it. You know what? It feels good. I don't care if people ostracize me. I don't care if my family ostracizes me anymore. I could give a rat's ass about any of those things, because it doesn't matter. And the older I get, the more I realize it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get all butthurt because whatever. These people are out to lunch. Not my fault. Not my fault. Get some therapy, get some help. Then you can come around and hang out with me. And if you can't behave yourself, and if you can't treat me with respect, I don't want to see you. I got friends like Regis. I got friends. You know, I got enough people I can talk to about truth, and that's liberating. When you start seeing it that way, that's the way to see it. It's tough love, baby. It's time for tough love. It's no more flaky, just tough love. And that's real love. That's not fake love here. That's real love.
Dean, it's always exciting, always interesting, always educational talking with you. I can't thank you enough for the many times you've come on the show this past year. I want to wish you a very happy new year, and we will look forward to continuing our discussions on a regular basis. Shadow banned, deleted, or not.
There you go, man. I always enjoy it, Regis. Appreciate your bravery. Appreciate you having me on. And happy New Year in Crimea, man. Have some fun.